Hello and welcome to our webinar. We're going to talk today with Bill Cook about real estate options using self-directed IRAs. And in just a moment, we're going to bring Bill on. I'm going to talk a little bit about IRAs as an introduction because he is going to talk about how you can use them in a self-directed IRA and give you an example. So I just want to go over some of the things about a self-directed IRA that maybe you're unfamiliar with. My name is Larissa Greene. I'm with Advanta IRA. I've been with the company for almost 13 years now. I see it says 11, and it's actually closer to 13 at this point. And I handle education, marketing, and business development with Advanta. I do a lot of classes, a lot of education, some continuing education for CISP, for realtors, attorneys, and tax professionals. And here at Advanta, we do a lot of education. So if you're interested in learning more about prohibited transactions, what you can and can't do in an IRA, please check out our events page at advantaira.com/events, where we talk more specifically about the rules. So today you're going to see we're really going to focus on real estate options. And I do feel like it's a more advanced strategy for investing. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type your questions into the question box as we go, and we'll get those answered as we can. And of course, you might have the same question as somebody else, so I encourage you to go ahead and ask that. Just something to be aware of, Advanta does not provide any investment advice. We don't endorse any products. Everything is for educational purposes, and we don't provide tax advice or legal advice. If you have a question, go ahead and ask it, but I may defer you to a professional that has helped our clients in the past. So very simply, what is a self-directed IRA? And a self-directed IRA, different than a brokerage firm would allow, we hold anything outside of the market as long as it's allowed within IRS rules. And so that can be things like real estate options, like we're going to talk about today, but it can be a whole long list of things, like it can be buying and holding real estate, private lending, whether it's secured by real estate or something else. It could also be things like cryptocurrency, gold and silver bars and coins. And like I said, the list really does go on. And so we're holding the account, you're finding the investment, and we help you get it done in the name of the retirement account. And so that really just about allows the sky's the limit as far as types of investments. I think the biggest question that I get is about types of accounts that can be self-directed. So when you're looking at truly diversifying your portfolio, what types of accounts can you do that with? And actually, if it ends in IRA, it can be self-directed. For some reason, a lot of people are under the impression that it has to be a Roth IRA, but that's actually not the case. This can be pre-tax money too, so traditional Roths, Roths, inherited accounts. If you inherited an IRA from someone, we also can help you with savings accounts like health savings accounts and education savings accounts. And then of course, plans for small businesses, solo 401ks, SEP IRAs, and simple IRAs. All of these can be self-directed. So you can establish the account with us and it can be brand new, something that you maybe haven't done before, or you can transfer an existing account. The really cool thing here is that it is not an all or nothing strategy. So you can establish an account, transfer money over from an existing account, and you can move over just what you want or need to self-direct. But something really neat about options that we'll be talking about today is you don't need a ton of money to invest in a real estate option. And we'll talk about how that works within the IRA. If you're starting, let's say, with an annual contribution, you acquire an option on a property, what do you do when you come to that time where you can execute that option? So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. I did have a question about tax professionals. If you would just email me, and I'll make sure to put my contact information up for you. And I'm happy to share names of tax professionals that have helped our clients in the past. So something I want to point out here, because you're going to see when we talk about options, how they can, have a lot of earning potential, where contributions versus earnings are different when you're talking about a retirement account. You are limited to the amount you can contribute on an annual basis. That's going to simply be, $7,000 or $8,000 if you're over the age of 50 for a traditional or Roth IRA, and then they do go up from there. But you can see where if you just start with a contribution in the future, when you can purchase that property, if you either don't have another account, you haven't made additional contributions, you don't have a ton in earnings, you might come to a time where you're not sure how to exercise that option. We'll talk about what we've seen in the past, but the earnings here are unlimited. So if you put $10,000 into a real estate option, and then you get to the time where you can sell that option maybe to someone else and you have the potential for large earnings, those earnings are not subject to the same contribution limits that your annual contribution is on a regular basis. So just keep that in mind, that your earnings are unlimited and they are returned to the retirement account either tax deferred or tax free, depending on the type of retirement account or savings account you hold. So it's great news because you don't have to worry too much about those earnings because they're going to grow tax deferred or tax free. So now I'm going to introduce Bill. He's joining us today. He's going to talk about options and more specifically using them as a tool for your retirement account. He's going to go over some examples of that. And like I said, I do feel that this is a more advanced strategy. So please feel free to type any questions you have in the chat box as we go, and we'll get those questions answered. Bill, how are you doing today?
I am doing great, and I want to thank you very much, Larissa. A lot of y'all don't know this, but this morning I had to go deliver a copy of an option that I did yesterday, and this is on a property that Kim and I want to buy for us in Venice, Florida. And I got back just minutes before this call started, and Larissa was like, Bill, are you there? And the other thing I need y'all to know is that my wife and I absolutely love Larissa. We have 4 accounts at Advanta. They're all self-direct. One's a Roth IRA, and then 2 are 401ks, one for Kim and me. And then we have our self-directed HSA account with Larissa. But we love working with Advanta, and a lot of our friends that I do business with on a very regular basis, they're also here. So it makes it kind of easy. But Larissa, thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much, Bill.
Okay, so today what we're going to talk about is the power of options. And you should know that Kim and I use options as one of the things we have our self-directed Advanta account invest in. And I'll show you one deal in here why. And also I want to bring Larissa into the conversation because I want you to see in the option you're going to see, this was not done in a self-directed account. And I'll explain why when we show the deal. But at the same time, oftentimes we do use our option with a self-directed account. And I want Larissa to talk about how we do that. So let's begin with first slide is going to be power of options. So let's get started. So the question we get a lot of is what is an option? And the key thing to know about options is that in uncertain times, and right now when you have tens of thousands of people being fired from the federal government, there's an upheaval in government, no one really knows what's going on, tariffs, what will they do to real estate? Is it overbuilt, underbuilt? Where will interest rates go? One of the things that I've learned over the years is that in uncertain times or with uncertain deals, I avoid getting deeds and mortgages. In other words, I don't buy the property and go get debt. Instead, I'll use master leases and options to control the property, similar to as if I owned it. So I have the right to own it without being obligated to own it, and that's where options come in. So options are not only a valuable tool in almost every real estate transaction, quite often they are the best tool among all the tools that are available to creative deal makers. And you're about to see that in action. The deal that you see, the only thing we could have used, the only deal we could have used to make this transaction work was an option to give the owner of the property what they needed. So though options are the best tool, at the same time, options are the least understood and least used tools in all of real estate. But as I say that, I also want you to know that options are the most used tool in real estate. It's just most people, being realtors, buyers, and sellers, don't realize an option is being used. And by that, if you ever look at a realtor's contract, and let's say you want to buy someone's property, Sam Seller, you want to buy Sam Seller's property, then when you fill out the contract, in the contract, you'll say, okay, I'm willing to pay $300,000 for the house and we'll buy within 30 days. Let's say you say that, but then you're going to put in a contingency, which may say, provided I find acceptable financing. and provided the home passes an inspection report that I have done. And so if this contract gets signed, so the buyer signs it, the seller signs it, that's a locked-in contract. But the thing is, the seller of the property can't get out of the contract, but the buyer can, because it's an option. Meaning, the buyer said, I have to first get acceptable financing, and if I don't, I get to tear up the contract. Or I have to get the property inspected, and if I don't like the inspection, I can get out of the contract. So you can use different contingencies to where the buyer can not do the deal, but the seller is locked in, and because one party must perform and the other party may perform, that's what makes it an option. And so pretty much every purchase and sale agreement that realtors use, that begins life as an option agreement, just people don't know it. An option is a wonderful advanced deal structuring tool that you can use, and you can use this multiple ways, multiple times. You can use it when you're buying. So I just told y'all I was out today delivering an option that we got yesterday. I had it recorded yesterday, and I took the recorded copy of the option to the homeowner today. So I'm using it when I'm buying this particular property. But you can also use it when you're selling, or if you're renting, or if you're speculating, or if you're trying to protect a property. Options have many, many uses. So simply put, an option is a right to buy, but it's not an obligation to buy. So the example I used with the purchase and sale agreement from a realtor, the buyer was obligated, or the seller was obligated to sell, but the buyer was not obligated to buy unless the contingencies had been cleared. So said a different way, it's a case of may buy versus must buy. As investors, having the ability to do the deal or not do the deal gives you a lot of power and makes the deals extremely safe for you. And options can allow you, and this is to me amazing, options can allow you to control a property's gain, meaning as it appreciates in value. It can also capture a property's amortization. So as a property pays down, you can word it such that your purchase price, let's say, is equal to the then balance of the mortgage, which means with each mortgage payment the owner makes, your purchase price drops month after month after month. And you can even capture a property's cash flow and without ownership. So let's look at gain for a second. So I have a 5-year option on the property that Kim and I want to buy in Venice, Florida. And that means we have a locked-in price of $580,000, but it's locked in for the next actually 10 years. And that means as that property, let's say when we exercise the option, if it were 10 years from now and the property is $1 million, our purchase price remains at 580. So we would have captured all that appreciation the property had. So that's a pretty neat tool to use when you're not sure which way a property is going to go, up, down, or sideways. And you got to hear this clearly, because this is the way I use options most often is this. An option is a great tool to use when the owner doesn't want to sell. And for most investors, they do not have a tool for this. And the example you're going to see today was a case where the owner did not want to sell. And with the case of the option I just got today, it was a case of the owner wants to sell, but not right now. They want to wait till they find a house, and that might be in a month, and that might be in a year, and it might be in 4 years. But they just need that time, and they don't want to be rushed or pushed. And so this is a great tool to use when someone doesn't want to sell or doesn't want to sell right now. Big use. Okay, so where do you find option deals? And you'll find them from owners who do not want to move from the property, but they're being forced to sell. Or you can find owners who do want to sell, but not right now. So the example you're about to see is the first bullet. The example the deal we just did yesterday, that's the example of the second bullet. Also, houses that need work, but the owner can't afford to repair. So let's say I'm in Florida and we have roof problems down here because of hurricanes. What if I agree to put a new roof on someone's house because their insurance won't cover it? In exchange, I get the right to buy that property at some point in the future for a pre-agreed to price and terms. Might that be a good deal worth doing? And the answer is yeah. So folks who can't get a loan but need money, and that's kind of similar to the third bullet, but they may want to use the money to pay down a credit card. So folks who want to own a home they can't possibly afford for a price they can easily afford. I'll give you an example of that is Kim and I have been living in a motorhome for the last 7 years traveling around the country. But before that, we had a horse ranch in Adairsville, Georgia, 34-acre horse ranch. And when we were selling it, we were asking $500,000 for the property. And we found a buyer that Kim wanted these people to buy her house, and they had to sell their house first because they couldn't qualify for a $500,000 mortgage. But in talking to them, I found out they could qualify for a $300,000 mortgage. So I agreed to sell them our $500,000 house for $300,000. And in return, they gave me the right to buy the house back anytime in the next 30 years for $300,000, which meant I was going to capture all of that property's appreciation over the course of 30 years. Very valuable. And finally, homeowners who are facing foreclosure, and you're about to see an example of that. So let's look at an option deal that Kim and I did last year. So what you're looking at, this is a property on Vaughn Road. It's in Cartersville, Georgia, and the homeowner was in foreclosure. And Kim and I were up there. Actually, I was leasing out one of my properties, one of the mobile homes in our mobile home park. That's why we were up in Cartersville, not down in Florida. And Kim said, well, I have some time this afternoon. I'm going to go look at some of the foreclosures. And this was the third or fourth door she knocked on. And when she knocked on it, she found out, hey, there's something here. So let's go to the conversation Kim had with the homeowner. And this is what the conversation looked like. So first off, you need to know that she was going to lose her house to foreclosure in Georgia on July the 2nd, 2024. And there's no right of redemption in Georgia. So if she lost it, she lost it. And Kim knocked on her door about 2 weeks before the auction, and that was on June 19th, 2024. And basically, Kim said, hey, listen, you know, I was told that this house was for sale. I don't see a for sale sign in the yard. I'm not even sure if I'm in the right place. And the boyfriend had answered the door, said, well, actually, it's my girlfriend, and her house is in foreclosure, and it's due to go to auction in 2 weeks. And Kim said, well, you know, maybe I can help. Maybe I can give some advice. Can I come in where we can sit down and talk and see if there's a way to solve this where she doesn't lose the house? And the owner, who was on the couch, said, yeah, if you want to come in and talk to me, you're welcome to, if you don't mind the mess. So when Kim went in, one of the first things she noticed was the owner was a hoarder. And this is just the den. What you can't see are the bedrooms that were floor to ceiling furniture. You couldn't get in. The door would barely open or shut. It was so full of everything. And one of the things that you'll find is that with hoarders, the thought of having to move their stuff or not have their stuff is terrifying to them. So Kim understood kind of there was a problem here, and the idea of moving somewhere else or losing her house to foreclosure was extra sensitive to her. And Kim did call me up after she talked to the homeowner. And when I went to go meet with the homeowner, I did something called a T-bar. And what you're looking at is a T-bar. And this is the most important document I use as a real estate investor. And all I do is I take a piece of paper, I draw a T on it. On the left-hand side, I write down current position at the top. On the right-hand side, I write down potential position. So what that means is I'm asking the seller questions. And the main question I'm asked is Pete Fortunato's famous question, which is, why are you selling such a nice house like this? And I'm just writing down the answers. And as I write down why she's selling the house or losing the house, I'm doing an arrow to the right-hand side, and it's helping me to know what problems do I have to solve and what will that look like if I get these problems solved. And this also tells me how to structure the deal. So people always ask, how do I know which tools to use to structure a deal? And the answer is the homeowner tells me. So in this case, when I was talking to her, again, the property was in foreclosure in 2 weeks. She's going to lose the house, have to move. Right-hand side, we'll stop the foreclosure. Left-hand side, she doesn't want to move. She wants to stay here. Right-hand side, you don't have to move. Now remember, I don't know how I'm going to structure this yet. I'm just listening to her fears and her problems, and I'm thinking, what will it look like when this is done? These are the problems I've got to solve. Third bullet, she can't pay the arrears to stop the foreclosure because I asked that question, and I said, we'll pay the arrears. If we pay the arrears, it stops the foreclosure. Left-hand side, she can't afford to live anywhere else. It turned out her mortgage on this house with taxes and insurance was only $813 a month. And I had just rented a trailer in our mobile home park, which is about 2 miles from this house. And our 1980 single wide mobile home rented for about $1,200 a month. And then you can have this nice 3-bedroom, 2-bath house with a 2-car garage for $813 a month. She couldn't afford to live somewhere else. So anyway, this is me just working through a T-bar. I just wanted you to see how I do it. And I'm just realizing that she kept saying over and over, I don't want to move. I don't want to move. So whatever deal I do, I've got to get it where she doesn't move. Now, here's the problem she was having. She was getting 40 to 60 phone calls a day, every day, from investors, because the paper had run in the ad, foreclosure ad had run in the local paper. Everybody saw it. It's on everybody's database, and everybody's calling her. And every offer she got, we call it a big damn hammer offer, meaning they'll pay her cash about $150,000 to $160,000. The house is worth $300,000, so they're paying her 50 cents on the dollar. But here's the big thing: everybody she talked to, every offer she got, she had to either move before they would buy, or she had to move within 30 days after they bought. But the key was she had to move no matter what, along with all of her stuff. So here was our offer, and this was based on the T-bar that you just saw me do. And this is what we agreed to. Number one is you do not have to move. This took a huge panic off her shoulders. And I said, we will pay up your arrears, and this will stop the foreclosure. Again, no foreclosure. She doesn't lose the house. She gets to stay. Third bullet. One of the things I asked to do, this was going to be the structure, was that I was going to get the exclusive right to buy the property anytime in the next 30 years. So in other words, we're going to lock in the price today, and I get to buy the property anytime in the next 30 years. She cannot sell to anybody else. I get the exclusive right. And it's going to be a subject to deal, which means when I do exercise the option to buy the property, that her mortgage will stay in place. We're not going to have to refinance it. And we're just going to agree to make her mortgage payments on her mortgage for her until that mortgage is paid off. That's not a loan assumption. It's called a subject to deal. And she said she wanted to be in the home for at least 8 years. So I said, okay, even though we have a 30-year option, that we will not exercise it for the first 8 years. And we came up with a strike price of $72,832. And the way we did that, the way we came up with the price was the current mortgage balance when I was sitting there talking to her was $80,400. The arrears were $7,600. So I took the arrears off the mortgage balance, and I came up with $72,832, and that's going to be my purchase price anytime in the next 30 years. So why did the owner accept our offer instead of one of the hundreds of other offers? And the answer is we were the only ones that said you don't have to move. She didn't want to move, and she would have said yes to anything as long as she didn't have to move. So remember, sometimes the why is more important than the how much. So our job as real estate investors is not to buy, sell, and rent houses. Our job as real estate investors is to help people solve their real estate problems. The T-bar allowed me to understand the problem. I came up with a solution that worked for her, and we were able to do the deal. And the more problems you solve, the more problems you're able to solve, the more people you're able to help, the more deals you're going to do. It's simple as that.
And we had a question pop up, Bill, for you. Why would you take an option if the homeowner wasn't making her payments and ended up in foreclosure? How do you resolve that?
Really great question. The answer is she had gotten behind because of some bad decisions. And so she was $7,000 in arrears and she couldn't catch up. So she was behind. But she now had money coming in consistently. And with the money she had coming in, she could make the monthly payments. So all she needed was someone to catch up the arrears so there's no foreclosure. And then moving forward, she would make her payments on time. And I will tell you, I said I would not exercise the option for the next 8 years, the first 8 years. But it also said in the option, if she failed to make a payment on time, I got to exercise the option. If she didn't take care of the property, I got to exercise the option. All this immediately. And I made sure she understood this. And I was very clear and recorded her explaining to me what we agreed to, what the accord was. So she couldn't sit back and say she didn't understand it.
And how do you know that she continues to make her mortgage payments?
Every month, Kim calls. We have a power of attorney. And we also are logged into her lender's website. And so about the third or the fifth of each month, Kim goes online, looks to make sure she paid. And if she didn't, the lady who owns this house knows there's not a second chance. We're going to immediately exercise our option and buy the property. And so it's in her best interest that one bill that she needs to pay every month is her mortgage payment.
Great, thanks, Bill.
So today, is there any tool in your creative deal structuring toolbox that will allow you to structure this deal? And for most investors, the answer is no. And if you said no, what is not being able to structure a deal like this costing you every year? I mean, you can be walking away from lots and lots of money. So you're about to see the numbers just on this deal. So here are the numbers on this deal. Where our strike price, our purchase price is $72,000 and change. The value of the property as it sits right now today is $301,000. That's over $200,000 in equity we're picking up when we did this deal last year. The second thing you need to know is her mortgage payment is $813 a month. So if we exercise our option, we're buying it subject to her mortgage, this house would rent for about $2,200 a month today. So that means there's there's like $1,200 or $1,300 in monthly cash flow on this deal. So was it worth it knowing how to do this deal? And the total cost was paying up her arrearage. And we also had did closing, but the arrearage was like a little over $7,000. And when we added in what we paid the attorney for the title search and such, we had about $9,000 in this deal. Now, I told y'all when I was starting this deal that on this one, we did this outside IRA because I wanted to keep this as a rental and I want the benefits, the tax benefits that come from owning rental property. And if I own it inside an IRA, I can't take the deductions. But Larissa, how could this deal be structured if I came to you and said, Larissa, I want this deal, I want this option to be inside my solo 401k?
Yep, so that's a great question, Bill. So if you're making an investment in your IRA, it's going to be very similar to what you guys as real estate investors are used to, but now you're bringing in your retirement account. And I always like to say that you want to think of your retirement account almost like your business partner. So if your business partner is putting all the money into the deal, then it receives all the benefits of the deal. So like Bill said, he wanted the benefits personally, which he could not have if his IRA made this investment. But instead, if you say, you know what, I want that growth, I'm looking for the benefit of growth in my retirement account, then having an option might be a good deal. You know, however long term it is, there could be the potential for a windfall at the upside. So making the investment, you simply open your self-directed account and fund it. And again, you can see where Bill talked about the numbers. He said he had a little over $9,000 in this deal. So especially right now, if you're making your contributions, you can make a contribution for last year of $7,000 to your Roth, this year of $7,000 to your Roth. So you can get that $9,000 into a Roth IRA. You can do it with a solo 401k, a SEP, or a simple. Get that contribution in there and then make this deal. And so you open your account, you fund it, and then Advanta is going to help you with the vesting for the deal. So instead of it being in Bill's personal name, it would be for his IRA, Advanta IRA, for benefit of Bill Cook, IRA number 1234. And then Advanta is actually the legal signer of the IRA, but we want Bill's approval. So we're not going to approve of the option. We're not going to approve of the terms that him and the seller came up with. We're going to simply say, hey, we need that paperwork so that we can make sure the IRA is properly titled, and then we're going to leave it up to Bill to sign as read and approved. And once he does that, then we're going to sign on behalf of the IRA and execute that document and ultimately take Bill's direction on how is it being secured? Where do we send this document for recording? And then once that's all done, we'll get the money over to, in this case, Bill talked about, the closing and the title agent and our closing attorney and however we fund it, we're going to take Bill's direction. Once that is complete, the retirement account now holds the option. So that's super important when you're talking about current benefit versus benefiting your retirement account.
So let's say with the deal you just saw, let's say that 8 years from now, I exercise the option. Let's say I'm not going to keep it as a rental. I'm going to just turn around and sell it. I changed my mind. I'm older and I don't want another rental. So let's say, we'll round out the numbers. Let's say that 10,000 had come from my IRA to do this deal, to buy this option and get everything closed out. Okay. So I have
Mhm.
10,000 that left my IRA. And one of the things I love about Advanta, like when I was with Quest, every time I called in, I talked to another person, a different person, each and every time I called. And I was always having to explain what I was doing, which I can't stand. And with Advanta, you get one person's your account rep, and they get used to working with you and understand your deals, which makes my life much, much easier. So I like that part of it. But going back to this, let's say when we did this deal last year, Larissa, 10,000 left my account. And let's say 8 years from now, this property is now worth not 300,000, but 400,000. So if I had 10,000 of my money in the IRA, and then 8 years from now, I exercise the option and the IRA now acquires the property, and then the next day they sell it for 400,000. So you're talking basically 390,000 in profit. Let's take out any expenses, just 390,000 in profit. Where does that profit go, and how is it taxed?
Yep. So it's going to go back to the retirement account and it's taxed based on the type of account, but not yet. It's tax-free returns. So when I say tax-free returns, sometimes people thinking about pre-tax or traditional IRAs get confused. They say that's a tax-deferred account, but the return itself is returned to the IRA tax-free. It is tax-deferred growth, meaning when you take distributions, at the time of the distribution, it's considered ordinary income and the amount you distribute for that year. But the growth itself is going to go back tax-free, and then when you take distributions, it's tax-deferred. So if you have a Roth IRA, then that money is going to go back completely tax-free, not only at the time of the earnings, but also at distribution time, as long as you have a qualified Roth IRA. But even with a tax-deferred account, the earnings are not taxed upon return to the retirement account. Because remember, those earnings, one, are unlimited, and two, are tax-free growth until the time of distribution.
And I want to make sure this is clear. Everybody hears this. So my 401k with a Roth component, the 10,000 came out. So when I made that contribution, it was after tax dollars. So on the 390,000 profit that we're saying I made here, what is the tax rate on the 390,000 because I have a 401k with a Roth component?
Yep, it could be and you can use just the Roth component to make the investment. So that's, very unique with 401ks. You can commingle both pre-tax and after-tax dollars. And if you do have some pre-tax money in there, then and you choose, like, usually I'll tell people if you have some sort of a windfall investment coming up, you can choose to just use your Roth dollars to make these investments within the 401k. So it's very unique to a 401k.
Okay, and I'm going to say it my way because Larissa's having to give you both sides of an answer because she has to. In this case, with the $390,000, it goes back into my account tax free. And when I take the $390,000 out because I'm over 59 and a half, all the money comes back out tax free. There's no tax.
Yep,
And
because it's
that
attributed to the
makes it
Roth
pretty
bucket.
doggone outstanding. And if you do like one or two or three of these deals a year inside your IRA, do you see the amount of profit that can be generated when you hit your golden years?
And it could potentially, come out all tax-free depending on the type of account that you're using to make this investment. So again, when you're looking at, just making a contribution into this account or into an account in order to make an option investment. And I think it's a really cool strategy because if you think about it, sometimes you have a little bit of money left over from income on another investment. Sometimes you have a little bit of money because you're making a contribution and the rest of your money is working. There's this opportunity to put money into an investment and have it grow maybe over 5 years, 10 years, whatever it might be, and then go back to the account and you have started with a smaller amount of cash. So there's a lot of times where people say to me, I can't invest in real estate in my IRA. I don't have enough money. Bill, do you hear that often?
All the time. And the thing is, this is where wrap lending comes in. And again, we're not going to go into that, but I know Advanta has lots and lots of educational videos on their website. When I'm doing loans, and Larissa, she won't confirm this because she's not allowed to, but you should know that almost all the loans I make, which there are a lot, I rarely have more than $10,000 in the loan because I don't have more than $10,000 in any of my IRAs because all the money's out working. Now, if a loan pays off, which is about to happen next week, I'm having 2 loans pay off, all of a sudden my accounts will be flush. But most of the time there's 10,000 or less, and I'm able to go put that money to work doing option work or doing wrap work.
Mhm. And so, again, just going back to how it's done, it's the option in this case is held in the name of the IRA. The IRA holder will sign off on all the paperwork, essentially saying, yes, these are the terms that I have agreed to with the seller, but ultimately will sign any paperwork that's required to be signed with for the IRA on behalf of the holder. Um, there are other ways to structure this. Of course, you can use an LLC or a trust when you're structuring the deal. So if you prefer that, if you're using an instrument for recording like a mortgage or a deed of trust in order to put the public on notice that you have an option on that property, if you don't want it to be known that it's through your IRA, there are a couple different ways to do that. You can, of course, always leave your name off any titling that includes your IRA and just use your IRA account number. You can use an LLC or a trust. In the case of an LLC, the IRA is the sole member and the account holder can be the manager if they choose. If you're using a trust, the IRA is the grantor and the beneficiary, but the IRA holder cannot be the trustee. It must be a non-disqualified third party trustee to execute documents and act in that position or that role. I did have a question pop up about partnering with your IRA. So basically looking to have some personal benefit and some IRA benefit. The answer is you could potentially share the option with your IRA. The percentage of ownership would just be based on the amount of funds both you and your IRA bring to the table. Here is where this is a gray area. The IRS doesn't say you can't do it, but if at any time you are personally benefiting from the IRA's involvement in this deal, it could be prohibited. So let's say that, for example, you needed the IRA's money in order to create this option. If you said the consideration is more money than I have in my pocket right now, I can't borrow this from a friend or bring in another person in the deal. I have to have the IRA. Now you're benefiting from the IRA's involvement into the deal. And this is just my example, but that could be seen as a current benefit to you rather than simply going into a deal as a partner with your IRA. So I'm going to, defer to your legal team for you to talk to an attorney about that and get their legal expertise involved. But technically, the IRS doesn't say you can't do it. But, of course, with the IRS, there's always small print. So you want to be careful when you're partnering with your IRA. But we have seen people partner with their IRA, again, making sure that the benefit is just simply based on having growth in the IRA based on that pro rata share. We had another question about what about marketing to older landlords not wanting to pay taxes on gains? Have you ever seen an option used for that? And do you record the option?
This question's for me.
Yes, yep. So do you ever market to landlords that maybe don't want to deal with taxes and gains? And then also, how do you record the option?
Well, if you give me just one tool to use, if Kim and I lost everything and we had to start over again and gave me one tool to use, it would be a master lease. So I'd rent the house from the owner. So it's not sold, no tax hit, but I have the right to rent it to my tenant and I would make the spread. At the same time, for me doing that and taking the headache of the tenant and the property off of the owner's shoulders, I'd also seek to get an option. So he gave me the right to buy the house at some point in the future, and it may be after they pass away. So if I'm able to acquire the property, but after they pass away, then their heirs would inherit the property stepped up basis. I then exercise the option and buy it, and there's no tax hit. Again, I'm not an attorney, not a CPA. I'm not giving tax advice. So double check me on everything I say.
Great, perfect. There was also a question about the recording for this webinar. So yes, this is being recorded and you will receive a link to the recording after usually later today or tomorrow. So if you missed anything, you can always go back and listen again. I had another question pop up, Bill, and I'm not sure how to ask it. So I'm just going to read it as it is. And maybe you can interpret this a little bit for me because I'm not as familiar. How could you apply this strategy when using a lender's self-directed funds and the individual does not own the home? Normally, they transfer the deed and put the lender's IRA in second position. Is there a place for an option in here?
I would tell you to call me. It's easy, put in Bill Cook Real Estate, and you'll find me and you'll find my phone number. I've got to ask you some questions before I can answer that question. There's not enough information there for me to answer it. I need to
Mhm.
understand the question better.
Okay, got it. Got it. So please reach out to Bill. Okay, so exercising the option in an IRA. So now we talked a lot about using a little bit of money to make a big investment, essentially. That's what you're doing here. And so, what if your IRA does not have the money to exercise the option? Or what do you do when it comes time to exercise the option? So let's talk about what Advanta has seen in the past. So in some cases, an IRA account holder invests in an option when they have a smaller amount of funds. And this could be because all of their money is deployed or they're just starting with an annual contribution. And how do you make this investment going forward? And there's a few different ways that you can handle this. So the IRA can exercise the option. If the IRA has the funds, it can buy the property as originally planned. So they just follow the terms of the agreement, purchase the property at the time that it's available to them based on having enough money to purchase the property. So in Bill's example, he was going to buy the property for $72,000. That means that if he made that investment in his retirement account at the time that he can now exercise the option, he has to have $72,000 plus any closing costs or expenses involved in the retirement account in order to exercise that option. That is typically the way you're going to see it handled. But the IRA can also bring in a partner. So as long as they're bringing in a partner that is not disqualified, so they're considered a non-disqualified individual, they can bring in a financial friend that is helping and participating maybe with equity, in order to execute that option. So now I just want to make it clear, it has to be a non-disqualified third party because the IRA is already involved. So that means that Bill can't be that financial friend for his IRA. His spouse or his spouse's IRA cannot be that financial friend. It can't be parents or grandparents, children or grandchildren, or any business entities or spouses of those. That is very specific as far as who you can bring in. So now his financial friend has to be an unrelated third party in most cases. The other thing an IRA can do is an IRA can borrow. IRAs are allowed to borrow, so it can do that to purchase the property. It has to be a non-recourse loan, and in almost every case, the retirement account is going to be subject to unrelated business income tax. But circling back around to 401ks, they are not subject to unrelated business income tax for debt financing of real estate. So there are ways to mitigate that, of course, and so that's really a webinar for another day, but an IRA can borrow. The IRA holder can distribute the asset. So how does that work? They literally take a distribution of the option and put it into their personal name. And this is a taxable event, and it could be subject to penalty as well, depending on your age. So the IRA itself, whatever its value is, it does have to be valued by a third party. And we'll talk about some valuing of options in a moment, but it does have to be valued by a qualified third party in order to take it as a distribution. Tax and penalties could apply, but now the IRA holder owns this personally and they can execute that option either with a normal loan, bringing in family members. So now they're not basically limited to some of those things that an IRA would be limited to. The IRA can sell the option. So it can make a profit by selling the option without executing it, and the buyer can execute the option in the future. Bill, have you ever purchased an option?
I have not. I've created my own options.
Okay. So that's another exit strategy, and I actually am a part of an exchange group on Thursday mornings. That's where I was this morning, and many times we have talked about, I have an option on a property, I don't want to execute it. If somebody else wants to execute it, and they put it out to the group as available. So that is something else an IRA can do. And then an IRA can also extend the option. So if both parties agree, the IRA holder can negotiate more time before exercising the option and possibly pay an additional consideration to the property owner. We have seen extensions on options as well. Bill, have you ever extended an option?
In fact, I built extensions into my options. So the one that I just did yesterday is a 5-year option. I have the right to extend it an additional 5 years by paying $1,000 to the property owner, and that $1,000 is going to be applied toward the strike price.
Awesome. I had a question pop up. Can an IRA sell the option in exchange for a note receivable? I don't see why not. I might have to also, like Bill said, I might have to know more, but I don't see a reason that you could not do it in that way.
Well, the answer is yes, and here's why. Let's say this option that you just saw was inside my IRA, and someone wanted to buy the option from me before I exercised it. And let's say we agreed a price of 100,000. Then they give me $100,000, and that would go to my IRA account, and then the IRA account would assign them the option, so they now own the option. But what if they don't have the 100,000? Where they say, hey, listen, I want to give a note. Now, this is where I need you to guide me here, Larissa, because again, the note would have interest. So they would, in other words, the IRA would basically owner finance the option to the buyer of the option. So the option leaves the account and a new note goes into the account with let's say interest being paid, or maybe a participation note, who knows?
Yep, absolutely. Yep, it would be, so to speak, it would be the sale of an asset and the purchase of an asset at the same time. So that's how Advanta would handle that. hmm What happens if your option is shorter than their loan balance timeline? Who is responsible for the loan payoff?
In other words, so let's say I have a 10-year option and they have a 30-year mortgage. So when I exercise that option, let's say it's not going to be a subject to deal. Then when I exercise the option and I buy the property, their mortgage will need to be paid off. I will have to pay off their mortgage.
Got it. Okay.
Again, it depends on what is the strike price, what were the terms of the option. There's many ways this can go.
Thank you, Bill. Now we're going to just talk very briefly about valuing an option. And remember, we don't give legal, tax, or investment advice, but I'm going to give you some information on how we have seen options valued. And ultimately, this is up to you and your tax professional. But we have seen some account holders prefer to continuously use the original consideration amount. Most administrators will accept this. So since in Bill's example, he put $9,000 into the option, he could consider the $9,000 the continuous value. So in that case, it is acceptable to assume that the option doesn't have a larger value since you don't currently own the property. You just have the right to buy, and there's the potential that you might not exercise that option. So there could be a lot of factors in helping you decide when the time comes whether or not you're going to exercise the option. And I'll just give you an example is, let's say that values of real estate have gone down drastically from the time that you negotiated the option with the seller and the time that you can execute it. And so you get to that time where you could potentially buy the property and maybe decide not to. And that could be arguably a reason that you might say, well, the value is based on, the original consideration amount until that time that I decide to exercise the option. If you extend an option and give additional funds to the property owner, you would include that in your annual valuation. So let's say in Bill's example, in 8 years, he goes to the property owner and he says, hey, I would like to execute it. And she says, can I buy an additional 5 years? And he says, sure, that's an additional, consideration amount. They could agree to extend it at, no amount, but if Bill said I wanted it another, couple of years before I exercise without it expiring, then she might agree and say, okay, I'll do that for another $5,000. Then if that is the case, one, the IRA is responsible for making that additional payment to the homeowner, and two, that is going to be included in the annual valuation from here on out. And pretty much the administrator will do that automatically. We would consider that an additional funding to the same asset, therefore increasing the value. And again, it's likely reasonable to argue that the option may never be exercised or real estate values could decrease during the purchase period. And so again, value is subjective. The other way we've seen value evaluation done on an option contract is to show the change in value of the option over time with the change in the value of the property. Why? If the option is exercised 10 years in the future, then for 10 years, the value of the IRA hasn't changed, and then it might change considerably when the property is purchased. And so the IRA holder might say, I don't want it to go from 10,000 to 390,000 in Bill's example. And so they might show the difference in change of the value over time. So this can be done by taking the property value minus the details of the agreement in the option and the strike price and coming up with a difference. The IRS has not given us clarification on what they feel is the correct way to value an option. And so this is up to you as the account holder. But those are just two ways, two examples of ways we have seen options valued. We had a few questions pop up here. Do you use a specific POA, Bill, to close?
A POA, a purchase power of attorney?
I think power of attorney. I think power of attorney.
The answer is yes. As far as I have a very specific power of attorney that allows me to do anything to do with the mortgage company, with insurance, with property taxes, with the property itself. So yeah, I do get a POA when we're doing an option.
Okay. And what if you decide to execute the option during the buying period and the seller won't sign the transfer of deed?
Very good question. And so the answer is, number one, you want to sit down and have a conversation. You know, we agree to this. Tell me what's going on. So it may be something small, maybe something big, but you should know one of the most important things I do, and I learned this from Pete Fortunato and Jack Miller. One of the most important things I do is I secure my options to the property using a mortgage in a mortgage state or a deed of trust in a deed of trust state. So what I did yesterday was I had the owners, we had the option witnessed and notarized, and then John Shaw was speaking in Sarasota yesterday. I went to go listen to that. Then I went to the courthouse in Sarasota and I recorded the option, but the option was an attachment to a mortgage. And so that option was secured to the property. And just like with, let's say you get a loan from Bank of America and you change your mind, you decide not to pay them, what's going to happen? What recourse does Bank of America have? And the answer is they're going to call the note due, and if you don't pay it off, they have the right to foreclose and take the property. The property is the collateral for the promise.
Perfect. What if the mortgage balance pays off before the option date?
Then it depends on what the option says. Let's say my option said my purchase price will be the then balance of the mortgage, and the balance of the mortgage is zero. What would be my purchase price of the property? Zero. In the case of the option you saw as an example here, my strike price is 72,000. So it doesn't matter what the mortgage balance is, high or low, I'm going to be paying 72,000 and change for this property. And let's say the mortgage is paid down to 52,000 when I exercise my option, then I'm paying the seller 72,000 from that. The difference between the mortgage, because I'm taking it over subject to, is $20,000. So she would get $20,000 at closing. The difference between strike price and mortgage balance. And what that meant was she captured the property's amortization, the note's amortization over the period of time.
Got it. And if you sell the option, is it a free, simple transfer, or what profit do you look for?
Well, no, I'll assign the option to someone else and they pay me a sum of money. Maybe it's cash. Maybe I trade the option for a deed to another property. Maybe I trade the option for part interest in another property. It can be done so many different ways.
If you have any other questions, go ahead and get them typed into the chat box now. But before we close out, I want Bill to tell us about his upcoming class. If you guys are interested and want to learn more, Bill can tell you about how to access information.
Well, basic is I have an options class coming up on March 22nd and 23rd, 2025 in Tampa, Florida. Both days will be from 9 until 5. And very excited, you can come in person or you can come on Zoom. The in-person, I think we hold about 150 people and it sells out every year and we're close to selling it out now. We just had we did sell out. We were able to add another room to the meeting room. And so now we're working on that. And it pays to be in person for the simple reason people from all over the country and usually very seasoned investors are the ones who attend this. And so these are people who know how to lend, they know how to do option work, they know how to be a landlord, they know how to flip. It's just great information gets shared. And when I'm teaching, there's a lot of back and forth with the seasoned investors in the room, because maybe they have a different way of doing something, but at least they're really great conversations. But to get more information about it's called a Power of Pure Options seminar, go to billingkimcook.com and you can see the sign up for it there. We have an early bird running right now, so the price of the class is going to be $597. You can bring a partner for $397. And again, you can come in person or on Zoom. And it also has a money back guarantee, which says at the end of the class, if you sit back and say, I really don't, that wasn't worth my valuable time, we'll gladly refund your money. It's a class like no other, and it's a really great class on options. And going back to it, it's a tool that almost nobody knows how to use. And when you have this tool in the toolbox, you're able to do deals that nobody else can do. So it's a class that pays for itself again and again and again, if you'll get out there, if you'll get face-to-face, if you'll sit down and talk to sellers. So a great example is on the deal that you saw in this program, Kim knocked on the door. And on the house that we did an option deal on yesterday, this is a house for me and Kim to live in for the next 20 years in Venice, Florida. The way Kim found it was she was driving through the neighborhood, saw a lady in the yard. Her house was not for sale. It was not going to be for sale. Kim talked to her. The lady said, would you like to see the inside? Kim went in, they talked, they visited. Kim kept up with her, sent her some thank you notes. And about 4 months later, their world changed and they decided to move to Vermont out of the blue. And they called Kim and said, are you still interested in my house? But she talked to them in her yard. And again, you saw on the one on Vaughn Road, Kim knocked on the door. So if you go out there and you get busy and you're in front of people and you're doing T-bars and your heart really is, I'm here to find problems to solve and people to help, having the option tool in your toolbox is extremely important. So I hope to see you there, and you're welcome to call me about the class. My phone number is 770-815-8727, but I would not dawdle. Our room block is about full, and like I said, this class will sell out. It sells out every year. Thank you, Larissa.
Great. Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you everyone for joining us. Again, this is being recorded, so this will go out to you either later today or tomorrow, and it'll get posted to our website and YouTube. And I hope everybody has a great rest of your day. If you have any questions, let us know. Thanks, Bill.
Oh, thank you so much, Larissa. Love you so much. Thanks.
Bye-bye.